It is very important as humans that we experience stress. And I think this is a really important concept because it helps us understand that the goal of life is not to eliminate all stress. One, it's not realistic. Two, it's actually not good for us. I'm going to touch on that in a minute with a story. But also, the goal is to be able to reset quickly from the stress because that's biochemically how we are supposed to function. So we're going to get back to that place. So I want to walk you through really simply kind of what's happening in our body when we experience stress, because again, this is something that we experience multiple times throughout our day. We are basically intended to have something happen in our environment. We literally have something called primitive reflexes and reflexes that help us respond quickly to what's going on. And then we're supposed to clear out that stress and move on. So basically, you think about like if you hear a loud noise, right? Something falls behind you. What actually happens in that moment very quickly, we shrug our shoulders, we turn to the response, our pupils dilate, and you think about this from a survival perspective, like that is all intended to help us quickly see, do we need to fight? Do we need to flee? Is our life being threatened? And actually, there's really cool information behind the reasoning of shrugging our shoulders. It's to look big. So all this neurology is the exact same that it was way back in the day when we were living outside amidst predators, right? So this serves a very important purpose. What happened back then and what still happens in the animal kingdom is they turn towards a stimulus. They realize, okay, nothing threatening. Someone dropped a book, say, and you get back to your life. Animals, when they experience stress, will often shake or move, and that's how they kind of clear out the cortisol and the stress chemicals. So this is a very beautiful thing that happens in cases where, maybe we need to assess if there's something dangerous going on around us and we can run or we can stay. Again, this is for our survival. But what happens when we have chronic stress in our life? What happens when it's not just a quick sound of something dropping behind us, but maybe it's the coworker sitting next to us that drives us crazy? Maybe it's something stressful going on in our children's lives. You ask any mom, we're only as good as our children are. So no matter what's going on in their lives, it's like we take that on. So that is not a quick response moment. We are literally carrying the stress with us day to day. Think about, another example. Think about I know we've done this. I am not the only one who's done this, but maybe you're driving and as you're driving, someone cuts you off. Some days, totally fine. I can handle it. World is beautiful. Rose-colored glasses on. And other days you're like, dude, you just picked the wrong woman. And for maybe 20 minutes of your car ride, you are just yelling at that person in your head. Or, of course this happened. Like, what is he thinking? Like you are just creating a story about that person. That person is stuck with you way longer than they've actually been next to you in their car. You are carrying that stress in your head. Or you just experienced like a stressful interaction with someone in your family, or again, a coworker. You're leaving the office, you're driving home, and you are still playing out that story in your head. Physiologically, viscerally, in our organs, your body does not know the difference between the event actually still happening and you playing it out in your head. So I actually tell this often to my dad, like when that person cuts us off, and we carry it with us all day, and you're going around and telling everybody that story all day and how mad you are punishing yourself all day for literally a moment that probably was 5 seconds of your life. So whether it's the person driving next to us cutting us off, or your child and what they're going through, or your coworker, or someone you're in a relationship, whatever that is, we are literally training our body to live in this chronic state of stress. The beautiful thing is we can untrain it. And if you don't believe me, I'm going to prove that to you with a really interesting study about how people were actually convinced and viscerally, physiologically responded with a stress response to a blue square when they were conditioned to do so. Hey, we'll get right back to the episode, but I want to share one of my favorite incredible tools with you. I'm all about sharing the tools that help make me feel as good as possible in the easiest way, right? So that's why I'm obsessed with the Sauna Space Glow Light. Our whole family loves it. And it's like having the benefits of morning and evening sunlight without having to step outside, especially when it's just not accessible, whether the weather is too cold or you're stuck at work all day. The red light therapy uses infrared technology to boost your energy, mood, and even your sleep. This is perfect for those days when you can't get outside but still want all the benefits of the natural light. I use this to start my day feeling grounded or to help me and our family wind down at night. It's so simple and easy to incorporate into your routine. If you've been wanting an easy way to bring the power of infrared technology into your life, check the links in the show description for my epic discount on Glow Light by Sauna Space. Now back to the show. So there's a really interesting study about a blue square. So you think about there's like all these obviously threatening things in our life, survival threatening things, and then the things that we perceive as stressful, right? Nobody would ever think, I assume nobody listening has ever had a bad run-in with a blue square. So these researchers took this concept of can we actually create a stress response, a conditioned stress response in participants of this study by simply showing them a blue square. So they basically taught these participants that they were going to see these different colors and shaped objects pop up, and that when a blue square popped up, they were going to get a shock. So they didn't end up shocking the people, but just the thought that that's what was going to happen when a blue square popped up, these participants' amygdala, the mental loop, the fear response, the stress was activated. We are that powerful. So if we can train our bodies to slide into a state of stress, what if we start to train them to get out of it? Okay, so going back to physiologically, what happens when we have a moment of stress? I want to inspire you and empower you to know some things about your brain, because I don't know why we don't all learn this in school, because our brains are fascinating. And sometimes simply knowing what's going on helps create an awareness so that we know when it's happening. And then we can come from a place of making informed decisions and, oh, there I go again, living in the mental loop. Well, let me get back over here, right? So when we have these moments of stress, there's essentially, and I'm really simplifying it, but there's essentially two parts of our brain that are activated. One is our amygdala. When you hear amygdala, I want you to think fear, response, figuring out what's going on, remembering that this is a threatening stimulus. I'll talk about that in a minute with an example. Or we're in our frontal cortex. Frontal cortex is like where we really want to live. This is where we're in charge, we're in control, we're making very rational decisions. They call the frontal cortex the CEO of the brain. And the reason it's nicknamed that is because when you're sitting in your frontal cortex, you're like, I got this, I got that, you do this, you do that. You were like the CEO of your life. So let's get you out of living in your amygdala, because if you're under a state of chronic stress, that is where you are living. And let's start to strengthen the muscle and bridge the gap between the stressful moment, getting stuck in that mental loop of your amygdala, and getting back into the frontal cortex. So again, I'm going to keep saying this. This isn't about eliminating stress from our life. This is about strengthening the muscles so that when stress pulls us out, when stress pulls us into that loop, into our amygdala, we have the ability, we have the awareness, we have the tools, and we have the muscles, because we've trained them to get back into alignment, to get back into the CEO aspect of our brain. Sound good? I think so, right? All right, so our bodies are so beautifully designed and our brains are so beautifully designed that, it helped us hundreds of years ago as far as our survival. But when we use the same brain chemistry in today's world, it doesn't always work so well in our favor. So for instance, there is an emotional memory part to the amygdala. So way back in the day, say, we were living in our environment, we were living outside, we had to go down to a river to get water, perhaps for our family. And while we're going down to the river to get water, we notice a pile of rocks and there's movement in there, and we see a snake, right? So our amygdala is activated to kind of assess the situation, figure out what's going on. Actually, both parts of the brain are activated because one's assessing and one's kind of like reacting. So it gets us out of the situation. But what happens is we forever remember, okay, that area isn't safe. What can happen is we can actually get stuck in this loop where going forward, any set of rocks can trigger this stress response. So you think about that in our life, right? Like we have these stressful experiences, like maybe it's our coworker next to us at work who sometimes triggers us, but every time we see that coworker, we're put into this state of stress. Or what if even on our commute to work, we're put into this state of stress, right? It's like we are punishing ourselves and getting us into this, what's meant to be a quick response for survival, we are living in it. So if you've ever wondered why you remember bad things more than good things, why you remember like put downs more than compliments. We are literally hardwired for negativity because it's essential for our survival. So going back to the snake in the rocks example, if you didn't remember that going by those rocks down by the river could potentially kill you, that could be a problem for our survival. So we are literally hardwired for negativity. This is kind of just a sidebar, but a really important takeaway from our brains so that you understand, like, I think we can so easily beat ourselves up over negative comments, or we can be really hard on ourselves. And I think, again, just creating awareness and observing that we're doing that, and maybe even understanding that we're hardwired for that, helps you remember how important it is to have positive input in your life, right? This is why I surround myself with positive people, positive quotes, positive books. Like, we have to constantly really be putting positive input in us and around us in order to negate that negativity. I think that's a really important take home, especially for someone who tends to live or you're stuck currently in a mental loop, or you ever have been stuck in a mental loop. Again, think about the coworker analogy or anyone in your life who's stressful and how much of your life you're carrying that with you. Well, can you make an impact in that? Can you take control of that by maybe in your commute to work, instead of playing the mental story and getting yourself in a state of stress, can you play some positive background noise? Can you listen to an empowering podcast? Can you maybe replay this episode so that you know what's going on and you can start to take control over it? Can you maybe phone a friend, like one of your favorite people that just helps walk you through these situations or makes you laugh? Can you even just play like something funny or look at something funny in the morning? You know, I'm constantly, like I said, putting good input in, and there's days when like I don't even feel like getting a ton of information in that I have to process. I'll literally watch like news bloopers or funny wipeouts. Like, it's just about counteracting the negative loop that tends to live in our brain with all we're juggling. If you like that, you'll enjoy the full version, and you can get that simply by clicking here. Be sure to also subscribe so you don't miss any future content.